Good morning, everybody. This is Grant, and I am full of rest. So the first thing I am grateful for this morning, my lovely of lovelies, is I'm thankful for sleeping in. I thought I caught up on sleep yesterday or the day before when I did my cup of gratitude. My watch did not go off this morning, and I am here, and I'm rested, and I am pumped for the day. So morning cup of gratitude. We're going to cover that. We've got a little bit of other news for everybody. So I'm super pumped about other news. And then, of course, we're going to wrap up the final filter as to whether or not your goals that went from the ether cloud of disorganization to an actual useful strategy. We're doing the last filter on that today before we turn our attentions towards how to set up your environment, how to set up the things around you to remind you of what your goals are. Because let's face it, in the attention economy, which is literally what we have, in the attention economy, anyone and everyone will look for a way to grab your eyeballs away from the thing you're looking at to the thing they want you to look at. And you know what? I get it. That's okay. And that keeps the world interesting. But we've got to set up our world. Good morning, Mohammed. Thanks for liking and checking in this morning. We've got to set up our world for success so that we can continue to contribute to our own lives in a meaningful way and to the lives of people around us in a meaningful way. So let's just do this thing. My morning cup of gratitude, I'm grateful for extra rest and the grace I can give myself to say, hey, yes, normally I have a very intense morning routine where I work out, I meditate, I get fresh air, I stretch, I do all kinds of routines. I read, I do a lot of stuff to get my mind primed. But for those few mornings that you just need to sleep in, the grace to say, hey, it's okay. Today's a good day. We're going to be recharged today and we're going to tackle things. So that is what I'm grateful for today. Let's cover other news. Let's do this. So in case you're hiding under a rock, something crazy happened yesterday. And it's not what you think. Because what it is that Bitcoin crossed $35,000 yesterday. Yes, you heard it here first. Bitcoin crossed the $35,000 mark. And this is humongous. This is significant. So I remember back in the elden years, the ancient days of 2017, 2016, when I bought Bitcoin at $800. You heard that correctly. I bought Bitcoin at $800, and I was tinkering with how to put this wallet key with that wallet key in some secret server over in Thailand. And I bought a bunch of little things like 10x cards where you could use Bitcoin to buy crypto, buy things with crypto. And I sold out way too soon, obviously. I made good money. And I bought some, then I pivoted some of that money into altcoins and other cryptocurrencies. And some of those went well, some of those tanked. In the end, I sold out. You're gonna balk at this. I sold out and we netted all of our cash and then held on to about $2,000. And so I sold out of crypto when it was hovering, I want to say $8,000. I sold out of my Bitcoin. Now, again, if you've been hiding under a rock, you don't know what I'm talking about. But everyone else knows that Bitcoin went all the way up to $20,000, made some Bitcoin crypto millionaires, and it turned around. What drove the rise in price at that time was total speculation. What could Bitcoin do? And it's starting to gain mass attention and starting to gain the news. So a lot of people did make money in crypto and Bitcoin. Most everyone else was chasing the market, however. And when the speculation began to wane, a lot of people were left holding the bag. And there was a lot of celebrities that got sucked into altcoins, and it was sad. And so it tanked and dropped down to about $8,000 where it's been hovering. And then over the last year, it skyrocketed again. And if you were paying attention, you made good money. There was a lot of secret crypto millionaires this second time around, which you'll probably not hear about because they wanted to continue to rally. And in the second round of buying, though, it's been largely driven by institutional investors. So by that, we simply mean large companies, big companies out there who are buying large chunks of cryptocurrency, mainly Bitcoin, but also Ripple, also Ethereum, and holding on to it as another asset class to hedge against their bets. Now, someone asked me the other day, they said, yeah, they're selling out all their assets and they're buying this. I don't know of a single institutional company that has sold all of their assets and replaced it with Bitcoin. That's insane. But if they even replace 1 or 2% of their holdings with Bitcoin, that is a huge move because Bitcoin is so finite and limited. And people are understanding that there's only going to be about 21 million Bitcoins out there. There is currently 19 million mined, and that means the next few Bitcoins that will be mined will be worth a lot of money. Mining value, I believe, is going to go up. This is not investing advice. This is my prediction. So mining investment will go up again, and then the value will continue to rise. I do believe it's going to pull back. I don't believe it's going to stay. I don't know where it's going to land. I'm not going to speculate like that, but I do believe Bitcoin will become more and more stable of an investment. And then eventually, once all the Bitcoins have been mined and that's been solved, then I believe it will also stabilize. I got a fly flying around here. It's insanity. So anyways, the second round of buying is largely institutional. However, I do believe these last few weeks, these last few days, if not few weeks, have been further speculation. So do not get sucked into the crypto craze because of one reason. Well, I say this with joy because I'm in the crypto craze. I invest in crypto. I'm not recommending you do, and I'm not recommending you don't. But think about this one principle. And it's always true no matter what the investment. There are no silver bullets. Buy low, sell high. Good morning, Jessica. I hope you're doing great this morning. Buy low and sell high. So I live by this principle, and this is not investment advice, but something that happened recently is there are 3 major cryptos, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. The reason I love Ripple is that Ripple is an institutional coin that banks like American Express and other companies like Santander have been using for international trade. They actually move their money between government lines with this investment class. And it has rallied up to about 60 cents per Ripple. Well, the SEC came out with news. They're going to sue Ripple, and it tanked. Oh, boo. It tanked last week down to about 20 cents per Ripple. So, of course, I bought a ton because it's another one of these lawsuits where the SEC is trying to prove or fight or create the law around cryptocurrency. And I read into it, and I think Ripple's going to come back. So its high was like 60 cents, 90 cents, actually. It was down around 20 cents, and I bought a ton. And now this morning, as of this morning, it's hovering around 30 to 31 cents. I've already made my money, right? Buy low, sell high. Do not look for a rocket ride to the moon with cryptocurrency. Be smart. If everyone's investing in Bitcoin and it's at its high, you need to ask yourself if that is the smartest investment when right next door to it, a house of the same value is a little bit depreciated. Is that a better investment? You need to ask yourself that. I asked myself that, and I came up with the answer. Again, not trading advice, but food for thought. And that is the Bitcoin craze going nuts. It's fun to watch, though, because of the horizons it opens for rural, poor people in underdeveloped countries and their access to capital. We could talk about that, but the immutable ledger technology is phenomenal. The crypto blockchain technology is phenomenal. And I really recommend you pay attention to it. So no link there. I was just watching my Robinhood account and my my Acorns account. And then, of course, I bought a ton of Ripple. So that's what I did. In others, number 2, the world is spinning faster. And in 2020, we had a record-breaking fast year or fast day. On July 19th, 2020, it was the fastest recorded day of all time. Proof that 2020 was actually a psychological mind and time warp that we all got sucked into. It was a little bit of a vortex, a pinch in the space-time continuum, and we all fell into that hole for a little while. In truth, though, the planet is spinning faster. So much so that we have had to use a negative leap second nearly 28 times in 2020. And again, that was July 19th was the fastest year on record since we've been recording in the 1960s. Now, the average day in 2021 will pass by 0.5 milliseconds faster than our current average day. Now, what does this amount to? Just for those who don't know, there are 1,000 milliseconds in a single second. And this is 0.5 milliseconds faster. Does it matter that much? Yes, no, not really. You and I will not get windburn in our hair or whiplash from this in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to post the link here for those who care and want to nerd out with their little science kids and students. But it is interesting, and it could affect things in the future because the speed at which the planet actually rotates can actually affect things like satellite placement, telemetry to get to Mars. It can affect things, but just probably not for the average Joes and Janes like us. In other news, number 3. Boom. SpaceX is making space more affordable for everyone, including developing nations and developed nations. Now, there are some developed nations. There's only been 3 space agencies that have actually put people in space, and there's only a small club of countries that have actually put satellites or any spacecraft into space. Now, when SpaceX came along, and I had the joy of explaining this to yet another new neophyte, another person who was new to, like, what is the big deal about SpaceX? Well, NASA, what took NASA about $4 billion to do, put a spaceship into space. SpaceX used entrepreneurial principles and what Elon Musk referred to as first principles, and just posed the question, what are the hard costs of putting a spaceship into space? We asked the same question for Spark Sites. What are the hard costs to building a website? And can we just do it for that? Just do it more efficiently. And that was how we started Spark Sites. We asked this question about space, and they realized, well, for just about $40 to $100 million, we could put for like 1/10 of what it was costing. We could actually, or I'm sorry, 1/100th of what it was costing, and every flight reduces that cost further because they're reusing parts. We could put a spacecraft into space. So imagine if you could never afford a home and suddenly homes cost 1/10 what they cost today. Would you get into a home? Imagine if Bitcoin was $35,000 and suddenly it was $3,500. Would you buy Bitcoin? Yeah, most likely. Now, those are investments, but a country has put its first satellite into space because of SpaceX. And that country is, I'll wait for it. I'll give you 10 seconds. 10,000. The country is Turkey. Turkey just put its first spacecraft into space through SpaceX. Its state-run satellite agency is known as Turksat. It is already building 2 successors. But when space travel and the contracts of putting a satellite in space to NASA would have to wait so many times a year over so many years, now SpaceX is putting satellites in space at a huge 10x factor, maybe 100x factor, and more countries can go, hey, it's going to cost us marginally less than it would have cost us before. Can we put a satellite in space? And now the country can safely allocate its own satellite. Now, has Turkey used other satellites? Of course it has, but it's been renting those. It's now making the cost-benefit analysis of putting its own spacecraft into space, and now it's got its own state-run satellite, and it can now run its own broadcast to the country. So this is just the first in a series of 3 satellites going up. They are a NATO, I believe, a NATO ally, Turkey. So if you want to read more, and then I have a fun fact about SpaceX. What is the name of the drone ship that will be catching the first booster or catching its landing? I'll give you 3 seconds. The name of the drone ship is, just read the instructions. You heard that right. That is the name of one of the drone ships. In fact, if anything, Elon has a very dry sense of humor, and you can see all the names of his drone ships and his ships on some of the quirky names they have for the SpaceX vehicles. And that, my friends, is other news. Here we go. So today's step is quite simple, and we're not going to go long into the 7 o'clock hour here at all. We have already felt the crazy orbital cloud of demands, requests, chores, responsibilities, and dreams and desires that circulate us in open loops, and we're always thinking about it, and it exhausts our brain. And we talked about downloading that into the form of stickies and then ultimately ending up in a bulleted, unordered unprioritized, bulleted list. Then we took the step of categorizing that list, again, unordered, again, unsequenced, but categorized. Then we took the step of ranking them, A, B, C, D, and E. A, you got to have it now. B, you want it, need to have it, but it could wait a little bit. C, you want it, you could live without it entirely. D, it needs to be delegated, but it still should get done. E, eliminated it. And you went through all of your items and did that. Then we actually took the step of making a strategic pass for the 1-year goals and chunking them. So we made a strategic pass and said, which is the linchpin goal here? And how do I chunk 18, what I recommend to be 18-month chunks? And so what that means is you look at a category like travel and say, I want to travel the world, or we'll say fitness. I want to have, abs, but I also want to eat right. You look, you see the linchpin goal is probably eating right. You need to get that under control. And then over the next 18 months, how are you going to move from getting eating under control to getting abs? And you kind of stage it out over an 18-week or 18-month cycle. I prefer to give you 18 months because that leverages the psychology of we overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 3. And so we just picked the middle ground there. We picked 18 months. And we said, I think this is a good time period to give ourselves, and we chunk those goals out. So today's step is quite simple. And you've heard it before, but now's the place for it. A lot of times people have used this phrase, and they've used it in a way that's so blasé and passé, we've begun to ignore it. But I do use this phrase and this principle and this tool, but in this step only, because without it, again, it's blasé. So if you've gone through your categories, maybe you have 5 categories in your life: fitness, health, spirituality, character traits, family, adventure, whatever your categories are, you have picked at this point, if you've been following. And if you haven't, go back into my feed now and get it before I lock it up and turn it into a course. You've picked these categories. So you should, and then you went through each category and you should have picked one linchpin item from each category. And that linchpin item is the item that's the easiest to do, or it unlocks the others. Maybe it's not the easiest to do, but it unlocks the others. It's the one that gives you freedom to do the other goals, or it's the logical order of the first thing you should do. So you should have 5 to 7 linchpin items called out on your goal list. And then we came up with these statements. Let's see if I have this readily available for you from yesterday. We had sheets. Yep, here we go. We got a sheet. Let me just share my screen with you real quick. It's right here. Share. And let's do this thing. Boom. Here. Oh, here we go. There we go. So this sheet right here, it's basically a commitment sheet. You name that linchpin goal. You say what you're willing to invest in return. You write that as a sentence. You're reinforcing this multiple times, of course. Then you commit to which short-term chunk. I recommend months, but you might choose weeks or days. And then you write what your goal is for each of those chunks, and then you write the date you're going to accomplish it. So you should have this sheet or your own form of this sheet somewhere, and you should pull those out. So now you're going to do the very simple step of asking yourself a question. And then I've got another sheet to show you. It's right here. There we go. Boom. I've got another sheet to show you. And this is also from the Top 100 Dream Igniter. And I'll pull this up in a second, but I'll just tell it to you and I'll eliminate the suspense. You are going to smart. Yes, you heard me. Smart these top category linchpin goals. Here, let me pull this up. I got to get this up here for you to see. Boom, boom. There we go. Let me just get it aligned here so you can see it. So you are going to smart these goals. Boom, boom. So you have 5 to 7 linchpin goals. You should write them down and then simply use this rubric to ask yourself. It just gets a check or an X. Is this, in this example, my first category is character traits. I would articulate a character trait that I want to cultivate, and that's the thing I'm going to focus on. But how do I make it specific? So I ask myself, is it specific? Like, I can't just say, I want to be a better person, right? In this case, I want to be a more trusting leader. I've been thinking about this phrase, I want to be a better manager at work. So I need to get more specific with that. In fact, this rubric alone, just doing this, you saw me hesitate. That hesitation is because I'm fact checking myself. Do I really have a clearly articulated goal? I want to be a better manager. What does that mean? I need to get more specific because the next question is it measurable? So is it specific and is it measurable? So I want to be a better manager with happier employees. Can I measure happiness? I think we can, but I need to actually have a way to measure happy employees. And so I go specific, measurable, attainable. Is it an attainable goal? Yes, there are managers out there who have made happy employees and continuously happy employees. Is it realistic? Yeah. And it's because it needs to happen for Spark Sites to be totally delegated to the team. So it has to be. Other people have delegated businesses. So is it realistic? Yeah. And is it time bound? Well, did I set a date? By June, I want to know that my employees are happy and able to manage the job day in and day out with a sense of fulfillment. So what is arising and revealing itself in this? What's revealing itself is that I need to be able to have a way to measure, are my employees living a fulfilled life managing the job? Now, we know that this is not a static thing, right? Humans change, and though they could be fulfilled for a certain season, they might not be fulfilled for another. So there's a deductive logical reasoning that goes, yes, it's a SMART goal now. And so my goal would actually shift from just being like, I want to be a better manager. I actually have a new goal. And that new goal is establish an employee happiness system, a check-in, if you will, a way to rate their ongoing happiness in a way that I can see trends. And if I can see the trend, I can hedge against that and then modify my own behavior and modify the systems around us. So, and I also realize I don't want to necessarily be what is considered a good manager. Of course, we want to be a good manager, but what I want is the fruit of that thing. There's a means goal and an ends goal, right? So what I'm realizing is that to have happy employees is my real ends goal. I want them to be happy in a continuous way. And we've had happy employees in the past, but I want a more sustainable model for this. So for me to be a better manager, I've realized that's too passé for me to say I want to be a better manager. Of course I want to be. Everyone would say that, Grant. So what I need to focus and fixate on is how do I build a good system that's continuously maintainable, that throws a question to the team and gauges happiness and satisfaction and stress levels. And they can trust that that feedback loop is going to give me something useful that I will act on and make their lives better with. So this is the purpose of the SMART step. It's meant to be a reflective step where you define, in this case, I was defining as an example, character, but you might have adventure desires. Oh, you can't see it. It's down there. Here, let me see if I can scroll down a little bit. There we go. You've got adventure desires and relational desires and money desires and fitness desires. And if you can put it up against the SMART rubric, is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it realistic? And is it time bound? Please don't glaze over this. Please take your time with this step. Because if you take your time with the step and use this as a moment to reflect and ask, is the statement I'm throwing out to people, I want to be a better manager, I want to be a better manager, is that statement that I'm throwing out actually useful to them and actionable to me? As we just found by example, this phrase that I want to be a better manager, that's great intent, but what's the action? And I've discovered by my process here, by this step. So again, for those who are just jumping in, all you would do is you take, here, let me jump out of here. All you would do is you would take your top 5 or 7 linchpin goals, you set them down and you ask yourself, is it SMART? Or is it specific? Is it measurable? And if you're not sure if it's measurable, don't just glaze over that and go, oh, well, I'll try. That's no. You are not giving your vision and your dream. And if you're ADD, you really can't do this. We are so tempted to get mental resistance. In fact, I think a lot of people give themselves the symptoms of ADD because as soon as they hit psychological resistance and they want to just glaze over things, they do. So this is literally the act of jumping. I've given you something to focus on to take the next level. And the temptation, as soon as you hit psychological resistance of, oh, it's not measurable, I have to think of a system for this, I don't have time for that. And they move on. That's unacceptable behavior for a responsible thinker. Now, maybe what you'll do is you'll time out and you go, I'm going to need more time for this. The SMART step should cause you to need more time for this. So if you find yourself wanting to jump ahead, do not give yourself the symptoms of ADD. Lower the symptoms of ADD and actually pause and make it actionable. If you put it on your calendar and say, this afternoon, I'm going to dedicate 30 minutes to coming up with the answers to these questions or a system for that one character trait I wanted to develop, something that is smart. That is how you're supposed to treat this step. Marissa says, I was going to say mom, geez. Marissa, the lovely bride in the other room, says, my mind definitely jumps when I am procrastinating. Yes, my love. We're going to go get breakfast here in a second. But yes, we all do this. And here's why. Procrastination creates an open loop. When there's something we do not want to do, we jump away from it. To Marissa's point, we jump away from it. When there's something we don't want to do and it creates an open loop and it's spinning and it's like, oh, my brain's already exhausted and now I've got to keep this thing in my head. And so it's like another Princess Leia bun spinning on the side of our head. Just, it's out there. What is it doing? It's a weight. It's exhausting. Well, here's how you deal with things you should procrastinate, but you just really aren't ready to work on it. You put it on the calendar and say, I'm going to give this 15 minutes this afternoon. Put it on the calendar. Don't just say it to yourself. Don't just write a sticky note. Put it on your Google Calendar. Put it on your phone. Put it on your top 5 list and say, I'm going to give this 15 minutes. Set a clock. Because what we don't want to do, part of the procrastination is we don't want to give this any more of our time. We have so little time left to ourselves. We don't want to give it to minutia that's just driving us nuts. That's where the orbital cloud comes from. That's where the stress and anxiety of all the open loops come from. When you procrastinate, you create an open loop. Close that loop by putting it on the calendar, breathing it out, and then moving on. But to Marissa's point, yes, we definitely jump more when we're procrastinating. So I wanted to call out the step. I could say SMART these top 5 or 7 linchpin goals, and you could just want to skip ahead and glaze over that. Please, for the love of all that is holy, do not skip over goals that you have said are important to you. You've said these things are important to you. So I want to definitely encourage you, take your time with it. And if it causes mental resistance and you want to procrastinate it, don't just glaze over and move ahead. Don't do that. Put each item that creates that mental resistance on your calendar. That is the final step of the SMART phase. First, ask yourself, what are my linchpin goals? Then ask, are my linchpin goals smarted? And if they're not smarted, they're actually not clear. Now, you might have gotten clarity in the 18 chunk step in the previous step. You did 18 months or 18 weeks of chunking on a step. You might have done that. That's awesome. But and that might have given you the clarity you need. But if you sit down to SMART this thing and realize, I don't really know what I'm talking about. It shouldn't be all of them. I mean, you should have a good amount of clarity from the chunking step. But if you do, pause, don't glaze over it, put it on the calendar, give yourself time to actually create a system around it, and then put that system into motion. Put that system on the calendar with reminders, or actually create that document you need to create to do employee check-ins like I gave from my example. I need to create a Google form that just asks my employees, hey, how are you doing? How's your stress level? How's your week? What's one thing we can improve for you? Do you feel meaningfulness in your work? And that will kind of give us a feedback loop. I just need to create that form and I need to send it to them, I don't know, once every 2 weeks, something like that. And once I have that set up, my system's up and running. Is it foolproof? No. I need then to put it on the calendar to check in with that in a few weeks. So that, my friends, is the SMART step to your goals. Do it. Do not glaze over it. So we've been covering a lot. Our next final step is how to set up your environment. And I will show you all the tricks, all the things I use to remind myself of what my top goals are. And yes, it does take some maintenance, but all of this maintenance pays off. You really should only have to do this crazy amount about once a year. And then there's just some maintenance throughout the year of you keeping these goals updated. So that, why do we do all of these things? We do all of these things to win at the game of life for the desires in our heart. not to keep up with the Joneses, not to be part of what everyone else says we need to be a part of, not to be part of the political drama going on, not to be a part of the COVID drama going on, not to not be a part, to be ourselves and to be ourselves fully, and really to be better for the mission today. Igniting lives of explicit significance, starting with your own. Have a fantastic day.